First thing up today, so we're talking about romanticizing entrepreneurship. When I think about romanticizing entrepreneurship, I picture like the Titanic movie or the Notebook or something, right? And it's very much this romantical relationship. So we'll talk a little bit about, you know, how maybe the media is portraying that, and maybe some common themes around that. So we can lay that out a bit. I want to tell you a bit about some of my own experiences in romanticizing entrepreneurship, or getting romantic with entrepreneurship, however we want to say it. But I'll share some of my experiences and some of the lessons that I've learned. And you know, I want you to know with that those are my experiences. It doesn't mean that they're anyone else's. I just want it to be more, I guess, a little bit more vulnerable with this group and put out some of the things that I've gone through, in hopes that you might be able to find some common connections in that. And then I'll go over some reasons as to why some people go into business, and some steps to move forward. So some learning experiences that I've had through my own things. So does that sound good to everyone? Awesome. Perfect. Thanks again for being here. I'm very excited to be chatting with you today. So to kick it off, like, you know, I already mentioned the Titanic and the Notebook and some of these movies, and some people feel like they have that sort of relationship with entrepreneurship. Or when you look at, you know, a company that raises, you know, millions of dollars for funding, you say, oh, I want to do that, or I want to be that, and that kind of thing. And it's very much portrayed in this very, you know, you get one side of the story. You don't necessarily get the other side. You know, you get the big wins, but you don't get the loneliness and, you know, the mental health issues and some of the negative aspects that might come with that. And I think like that is something that I've seen myself firsthand, and also something that's just become kind of commonplace in society. And so that's kind of more or less my take on romanticizing it. If we could get the chat box going here, could you put in, if you think of like any like famous entrepreneurs that you think of, you know, who are some that you might look up to, right? You know, for me, like Oprah's coming to mind. Just put some in the chat if you guys don't mind. I'd love to see some of the names that you're thinking of. Yeah, Gary Vee, that's a great one, obviously, right? Jeff, yeah, Alexis, Elon Musk. A lot of the classic ones they're in the media a lot, right? They're Peter Thiel, another great one. They're in the media a lot. We see a lot of successful stories. Obviously, we see some of Elon's tweets that aren't as well received or whatever it is. But in a lot of ways, these folks are very much portrayed in we see all their wins, but we don't necessarily see the downsides. Although I would say that Gary Vee seems to do a very good job of being transparent and documenting things. You know, a lot of times though, these are the types of folks that we would tend to think about, right? And maybe can we put in some of the characteristics of some of these people? What are some things that make them, you know, what made them come to mind as a first choice? Like, what are some characteristics that these people embody? Big personality, interesting. Yeah, for sure. Being like vocal, always being in the news, right? Confidence, yeah. Able to take some risks. It's another good one. Absolutely. Yeah. So being able to take risks and, knowing awareness in the market. Awesome. Yeah. There's a lot of good ones, a lot of interesting. I'm always interested to see why these people come to mind and why they might be romanticized or thought of first in the minds of folks. Cool. Yeah. Driven. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I know Val, so I'm gonna switch gears now into some of my own experiences in romanticizing entrepreneurship, and I want to share. I'll basically go through some of my own experiences, and hopefully, I'm hoping that basically by telling these stories, there's ways that you might be able to relate to them to some degree. So, for me, I'm from Atlantic, Canada. I grew up in New Brunswick, and all throughout high school, my first interaction with entrepreneurship was I cleaned and detailed cars on the weekend. So I would go to school Monday to Friday, and on the weekend I was just like hustling, right? Like I was just in there. I would be in there from like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and I didn't have much of a life balance, I suppose, at that point. So it was kind of one of the first times when I might have experienced burnout. But one of the nice things about that was that I did save up a bunch of money, and I was able to travel to Europe. So that was kind of like my first time where I saw like, okay, this is very interesting. I could earn a lot of money, and then I could sort of save it up, and then I could spend it on something that I've been wanting to do. So that was my first experience, and that led me to SMU, and I graduated from there in 2014 with my undergrad.
Let's talk about the future.
And then I worked at this Me Entrepreneurship Center after that. And meanwhile, did my MTEI program there, and got very involved at the university. Throughout that time, I don't know, you might want to call it procrastination, but I got into drop shipping. Has anyone ever heard of like drop shipping before? Put like a little yes in the chat.
Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
you got a store that accepts orders from one place and then you fulfill it to your customers, but you're not actually holding any inventory.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Right. So you basically market online, you find a customer somewhere, and you're essentially like the middle person between the two. And my experience with that was it's a load of romanticized entrepreneurship, I would say. At least that was my experience. I only had a couple months when I was actually profitable, and the other months I didn't actually make any money. And they're, I don't know. Anyways, I want to put that out there as part of my experience with it. It was a lot of work, and it was a lonely road to travel. And for me, it didn't last long. I think that's another thing that a lot of times you see entrepreneurship romanticized, but a lot of times too, it's more of a lonely road if you don't have company along the way. It's a great reason why, you've got this group of support here. So that was part of my experience. After that, I ended up reconnecting with a friend, and this is probably where I got the biggest taste of romanticized entrepreneurship. So we started a digital media company, and those were probably the longest hours I've ever worked in a day. And little sleep, a lot of work. It was a lot of fun, don't get me wrong, and we did a lot of interesting things. But this is one of the places where I learned I need to have more of a work-life balance. And this is one of the tips that I'll leave you with later on. But it was one of my biggest learning experiences of just like actually experiencing burnout and actually going through some having some mental health issues. That's when they mostly became present. Was just being extremely working extremely hard and not having too much time to actually think for myself and like where do I want to go with my future and that kind of stuff. And we'll talk once again. I'll elaborate on this here in a bit. But that was my actual experience of running a legitimate business with real customers and actually delivering real products on time and all that kind of stuff. And it was pretty stressful. Don't get me wrong, I learned a lot throughout that period. And I think like that is one of the nice things about entrepreneurship and going on these journeys is that you do get an opportunity to learn from life experiences, and they're unique. And then after that experience, I was able to actually teach entrepreneurship at Nova Scotia Community College. So that's where I most recently came from, and I taught students in the creative industries. So musicians, photographers, videographers, that kind of thing. And I was actually able to teach them some entrepreneurship, some reasons why you get into business and not, and that kind of thing. And so I will be talking about that, some of my own, some of the tools that I taught them and that I hope that I can impart on you today as well. And today I'm working at a startup. This is another great option for anyone out there. Like one of the best things I've realized is that I can apply all the skills that I've learned in a leadership role where the team I'm working with really needs the skills that I have. And by doing that, I'm also able to grow personally. So I'm working at a startup right now called Bright. And we basically do provide health and wellness initiatives to different businesses. So if you're an employee at a business, you can access live classes in health and wellness. And we also do cool things like come into your office and cut hair and that kind of stuff as well. But that's been a great experience for me because I get to learn from people who help to mentor me, help to grow me. And in turn, I also get to apply a lot of the skills that I've learned throughout my already fairly short career. So that's also, I want to put out there is like, I kind of wanted to leave you with that thought for now, because a lot of times you just think, I got to go start my business because it's the only option that I have. It's, it's, I can make all this money or yada, yada, yada. It's the only thing the other misconception is that like you are defined by like the title of what you are, the CEO of this or the owner of that. And a lot of times like that's actually not even the case, right? You're a person, and you're able to come into any sort of organization that could use a skill set that you have, a driven skill set, and thrive from that. So I want to leave you with that thought from my experience, and I hope that we can talk about that a little bit more in depth during the Q&A. Something else I want to touch on here is briefly. Actually, this would be interesting question in the chat box. Do you mind putting in some reasons why? Like I've got a list here but I'd love to hear your thoughts on why people go into business. Like, why do you go into business for yourself? Awesome. Be my own boss, money, freedom, create a dream, service, passion. Yeah, that's honestly, that was my list too. I think there's kind of three main ones, right? There is the person who likes to solve a problem. That's kind of one of them. You identify a problem and you find a solution for it, right? You identify an opportunity. There's that one. There is the money, dollar bills, y'all, kind of deal, right? Making the coin. And service. So providing a service was an interesting one. Creating a dream, like having a vision and fulfilling it. The other one that isn't on here that I had on my list was having like a work-life balance. So finding a way to make enough money, but also then be able to just, not subsidize your living, I won't put it that way, but live within your means, but do it, let's say if there's a way that you could work 20 hours a week, but then still fulfill your needs and still have a happy life that way. That does sound kind of ideal, I know. But, that is kind of the other approach that some people might take, is if they specialize in something very clearly, then they might be able to just use that money to have more free time and do whatever they want, right? Whether it's, volunteer or spend time with their kids or, whatever it is. So just another thought there. And then kind of the fourth part and the fourth and final thing I wanted to touch on is identifying like some tools that you can take home that really worked for me. And like the pretty basic things, but and you probably have already heard a lot about them, but I'll hammer them home again, hopefully. And I do really believe in a lot of these things that I'm about to tell you. So the first one is setting goals. So my goal setting looks something like, I have a journal, and I would write it down like every morning, like a goal. It could be a specific goal around, it doesn't have to be around like business or, entrepreneurship or sales or anything. It could be around like fitness. It could be around like pursuing a really interesting like hobby that you wanted to do, right? So like, let's say if you always wanted to like write music, you could just say, whatever you think is a reasonable timeline for you. You could say, I'm going to write a song like in a week, or I'm going to write a song by, day is it today? By August 28th, which would be Friday, right? I'm going to have it done by midnight on Friday, and I'm going to try to stick to it. And every day you come back to that and you revisit it. So I'm a big believer in goal setting, whether it's for finding targets, and if you have a team and aligning your team around having goals. That's one that's worked well for me. The other thing is like, I don't know, I wasn't sure the best way to title this, but like treating yourself like a business, like doing a quarterly review of like what you did last quarter. Like that's one of my favorite exercises, or on a monthly basis, do a reflection of like, what did I do in August? And it's usually stuff like, oh, I went on this amazing hike, or, I went for my longest run ever, or, I grew my team by 5 people, or like that kind of stuff. And it's just cool to look back at some of those anecdotes and some of those specific things. So if you're able to do a reflection, I would highly encourage that. And the other thing you can do on more of a mini scale is you could just do a reflection of your day and just look like what went well and what could have been made better. To that point, I've always found that like having more of an intention for my day, even if it's only one thing that I wanted to accomplish that day, helps a lot, right? So if it's like, my main thing today is just to get that job description done and posted so that I can start recruitment, or if it's that, I really need to talk to that investor, right? Or I really need to put together that part of my business plan, or I really need to, and if you get that done, you'll feel so much better about it. But that's just one of the other things that I've noticed, is just having like a very specific intention for each day. The other one, which I think in a lot of cases you've already done, is finding like-minded people, right? So this journey can be tiring, it can be lonely, it can be a real lonely road. And so if you have people along the way that will help you get there, that's another great one, right? So groups like this, places like Volta or co-working spaces, anything like that, where you can find other people who are also on a journey. And the SMEOEC, obviously, and other similar types of places, right? Or your local schools, those are all great hubs for like-minded people. And then, yeah, the last one I just said is like, if you had a good day or a bad day, and if you had a bad day, like don't beat yourself up for it, right? I was actually I was listening in on a call yesterday with an Olympian, like she does the steeplechase, which is like you run over several hurdles and then like a swimming pool or something in the middle of a track. I'd actually never heard of it before, but it was a very interesting conversation. And she was saying, not every day is like an A+ day, right? So, and I found that too. You can't be on every single day, right? But you can line yourself up so that you have, a bunch of B+ days or B days, or however you want to describe them. You can have a bunch of like pretty good days, and then so you're setting yourself up for that one really good day where you have to get a lot of stuff done. And that's just more or less like I guess it's a lot of these are more on like the personal side of things, but they're all tools that I've used to some degree in my career, whether it be in my own business or through working as an entrepreneur within organizations and using these kind of frameworks and tools to help solve problems. So anyways, that's my message for today. I kind of wanted to keep it short and concise with the hopes that we'd be able to have a bit of a dialogue after. So like I said before, I encourage you to put stuff in the chat or put the camera and the mic on, and we can do some back and forth if that sounds good.
Thank you, Jared.
Absolutely.
Jared, as you've been like an entrepreneur and you've taught entrepreneurship and now you're working for a startup, do you ever find that you run into issues where like you want to be the boss or you want to make decisions for the company, but you're not the one leading the whole team?
I haven't ran into too much of that. Like, that's a good question you brought up, Val. Like, I think the main reason I'm working with this company right now is like we share a lot of the same values, and the values of the company are very clearly laid out. And a lot of them are values that I align well with. So like one of them, for example, is like something it's basically along the lines of like shoot first, ask questions later. So by the very like it's written in basically our code that like you can do things first if they need to get done, and then you can problem solve. Problem solving is top of the list. So in a lot of cases, like I already have the green light to go ahead with something. There are some cases where I don't have the ultimate decision making and all that, but it's also a great opportunity to practice your communication skills. So that's another thing too, is like if you really want to push for something, you gotta basically treat it like a whole communications plan as to like how you came up to this solution and why you're really vouching for that. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else have questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it. Who's talking?
That's me, Jonathan.
Jonathan.
Hi there, Jared. So you've been at this for a while now. Are there certain things that you wish you would have done or you wish you would have known before you started this whole entrepreneurship thing?
Yeah, I think I could have elaborated this a little bit more like when I was going into the third section, but having a better understanding of why you're going into the business is a really good one. Like if you're someone who's just an absolute workhorse and you want to work like 18 hours a day, then that's like good for you to know ahead of time, right? But if you're someone who really does appreciate work-life balance and would like to work more of like a 9 to 5 or like half a day or whatever it is, right? Like having that in mind beforehand. And the other thing I mentioned too is really like trying to get better at like just visualizing things through. And I know that might not make a super amount of sense, but like if you're taking on a project, like what does it look like all the way through to completion, like down to like as much detail as you can think of, and also identifying like what kind of hurdles are gonna come in the way, like starting to think about what things are gonna get in my way. So like for example, if it's like I gotta put this business plan together, but you know what, I love watching Friends. So how am I gonna, or whatever, right? Like how am I gonna get around that? Well, I'm gonna make sure that I do this at the library or somewhere where I can't, or I'm gonna write it out by hand first so that I'm not distracted by my laptop or whatever it is. Just some of those little tools like that. But I'd say it comes down to visualizing and having more purpose behind your business. Is that clear?
Yes, thank you. Visualizing, understand why you're in the business, and staying focused.
Yeah, basically.
I got a question to follow up on that, Jared.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you have any advice for anyone that may be in a business situation with a founder or another partner or another person that doesn't have the same alignment in, say, the work-life balance or the workhorseness or even the vision of the business?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, Alex. I've been in that situation before myself. It's like, it's one of those things, like, it's kind of like ripping off a Band-Aid. That was my experience, and I'll give you my experience, but it's like, you know, there's a conversation that has to be had for sure. And you just got to be able to communicate about it. The other thing that you can do, and there are some people who like are pros of this, but you can always find someone to help like mediate or like facilitate, like not a mediation, but have someone from outside who can come in and just like help get to the root of the cause and like take notes and that kind of thing, and be that kind of in between, so it doesn't seem as much as like a conflict. I think the main thing there is you don't want things to escalate so that to a point where it's hostile, and you want to really get to the root of like what is causing this, and there could be a very simple solution, right? So to kind of to sum that up, I'd say, like, yeah, try to communicate on it. If you don't think that's an option, then I would look to find someone who could mediate it, and that could be like someone who is a mentor to the group, a coach, like a business coach or something like that, or someone that's trusted by the group. Those could all be potential people who could help facilitate that type of conversation. And once again, for that too, sorry, Alex, one more thing. And I just try to like visualize, like, what does that look like? Obviously, and try to think of all the potential scenarios of like, what will the pushback be, and where will all the complications come up, and that kind of thing, and just try to visualize that through and anticipate those things.
Yeah, we just went through this whole process, so it's interesting to see other people's takes on it. And for us, communication was the big key, and that's what kind of kept things alive and healthy and friendly afterwards. But I just see a lot of people go down the same kind of path, where one person's get really into it and the other person's maybe wanting to spend more time doing their own thing, and it's unfortunate when it falls apart. So yeah, any advice for people is helpful, I'm sure. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
There's a question in the chat. I'm not exactly who it's from because everyone's name is Vimbai. But it talks about, is there any way that someone risk adverse can romanticize entrepreneurship with all its challenges? Does anyone want to elaborate on that? Who wrote that question?
Wish it was me, but it wasn't me. Any of the Vimbais wrote that? Nope.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I actually completely understand the question.
Yeah, I would.
I'd say, like, well, maybe
someone like not entrepreneurship can be a bit of like a risk, I guess. There's a bit of risk taking. So
right.
Maybe for someone who's not, I'm not sure.
Yeah. So if we were to say, like, basically under the assumption, like the way this could be interpreted is that if you're risk adverse and you want to get into entrepreneurship, what are some ways you could do that? So, this is kind of the operations person coming out of me, I think, but you could plan, right? If you're a planner, you could really plan this out. And if you're risk adverse, you could do in your operational plan, you can do like a risk assessment of what are all the things that could go wrong. Not to try to scare you out of it, but once again, trying to think of, like, if all these are the things that could go wrong, what are the things I can do to better prepare for them? That's what I would mention for that.
So we have one here. It says, what was your struggles in finding new clients and creating a sustainable cash flow over the months and weeks?
I would say, so I'll talk about, I can share one experience with the digital marketing company. One of our troubles was that, like, trying to find clients and sustainable cash is that we didn't have clear and concise messaging. So someone would come to us and they'd be like, hey, can you do this? It's like, oh yeah, we can do that. Can you do this? Can you do that? Yeah, absolutely. So we didn't really necessarily have like a menu or a list of like very concise services of like, this is what we do, this is what we offer, this is how we can help you. So that would be the first one. Like, get really clear on your messaging, and that was a game changer once we had kind of figured that out. The other thing that we had done too is we kept seeing after a while once we did that, we kept seeing a similar type of client coming to us, so we could almost already. We obviously listened to them when planning our projects, right? So we would do, like, let's say we would do a video project, for example. We would want to meet with them and discuss their needs and all that kind of thing. But out of that meeting, we would typically could say, like, well, that client is a lot like, client X or client Y and that kind of thing. So we already got a better understanding of what our clients' needs were when they were coming to us. In terms of creating sustainable cash flow over months, in my industry, or in the media industry, what a lot of people do is they put clients on like a retainer, right? And so the way that would be advertised, you would typically, or this is the way we did it anyways, is we would offer a bit of a discount if a client was to sign on for a longer term contract, right? And so that's how we help to mitigate some of the cash flow risks, especially in our industry. You have to know, like, if it's cyclical, like, is it going to be much more busier in the summer versus the winter? And that was the case for us. We would have, 75% of our business would be like in the summer, fall time. And, the rest of the time would be somewhat like fairly quiet. So you want to think of different ways that you might be able to provide services or offer things that in your slower time of the year, or look at ways that you could change your revenue model to something maybe like a subscription, or maybe by getting paid up front. Those are some different ways you can mitigate cash flow. Hope that was helpful.
Oh, I have a question.
Yeah.
So how has the field that you're in kind of changed ever since the pandemic happened, and how did you manage to kind of keep that work balance, or just keep sane during a time like that, especially being an entrepreneur? And I don't know if, like, in comparison to maybe like a regular job, the kind of things that might be in place, but when you're running your own business and stuff like that, like, how did you manage all of that?
Yeah, so the company I'm with now, we actually did a complete pivot of our services. So we were, to give you a better idea of how we handled it, we were offering haircuts, in-person haircuts. We would go into an office and we would have a stylist there, and they would essentially cut hair. And obviously, as you know, with the pandemic, that would have shut everything down. So offices were no longer open for a good period of time. And during that time, our company did a very big, substantial pivot with a complete rebrand, and launched a whole new brand, the whole different type of service offering. Still under the impression that, after things open up, whenever that is, whenever people do end up going back to work, that that service will still be there eventually. But in the meantime, we've got to be entrepreneurial, and we've got to take into considerations of some of the other opportunities that we could focus on. And so that was a big part of it. The number one core value that we have is self-care. So even looking at our own thing, we looked at haircuts as a perk for companies to be able to offer their employees as, a self-care thing. But we thought, how can we take that a step further? And so that's how we ended up getting into these live online health and wellness classes, and yoga and fitness and nutrition. And so it very much was like launching a brand new business, complete new messaging, complete some of the same old customers, but mostly new ones, right? With a whole completely new value proposition and new revenue streams, different cost structures, a lot of hiring, all that kind of stuff, whole revamp of the company. Yeah. So yeah, to answer your question, a lot changed, I suppose. A lot happened. Yeah.
Jared?
Yeah.
It's Asan. Have you used your own social media platform for like growing your business and reaching out to your potential customers, like following some leads? I want to know like which platform and how did you use that, and like any stories?
Yeah, I'm honestly really bad with my own personal social media. I don't really I'll post a picture of like my shoes or something, and it has nothing to do with the business. That being said, though, I have used, we did a lot of I'll go back to our to digital media company. We heavily used Instagram and Facebook, both as a tool for our clients and a tool for us as a business. And what we really focused on for us anyways, and what we loved, was telling the stories of our clients, right? So we really focused on that kind of that storytelling part of it. And the way we were able to market ourselves was just through our portfolio of work, right? So we would be able to post things and tell stories about our clients. And that's essentially the type of customer that we wanted to attract. Now, that was our strategy. Obviously every company would have their own, but my take on anything with social, especially visual things, that you want to really think about the customer and who's going to be using your product or service.
Yeah, right. Good point. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other follow-up questions on that, or is that helpful?
Because I was just thinking that like some of the entrepreneurs, they're just trying to start to have their own personal brand on the social media platform. And when I asked them like, what is the purpose of it? They said, we don't know, but we're just trying to build like the potential like pool of people like from different walks of life, that if we come up with any idea and if we reach the point that we're going to sell anything or promote anything, we have, for example, 10,000 followers on Instagram, or like thousands of followers on Twitter. And it was just looks weird for me, because I was like, okay, but you don't know what type of audience do you want. Like you may want to do the B2B business, like with businesses, maybe you want to do some like go to fashion and sell something to like regular customers. But I just want to know like the role of these personal like founders social media platforms, because nobody could deny that it could really change the game. Like even people that mentioned in the chat, some other guys like Gary Vee, they're just using their own platform to like expand their work. So I think it's just a tricky place to play, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. My tips around that is just like focus, right? Like focus on one platform, focus on one account, really get to know your customer on that account. Doesn't have to be personal, but I would start with like, if you're selling something and that's your main, that's your main go-to, is that's what you want to get, is sales, and you know who that customer is that you want to attract. Like I would just really try to focus on that.
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
And I mean, you look at someone like Gary Vee. Like Gary Vee was, from what I understand, was one of the first YouTubers, and that guy's been talking to video screens for like 15 years, right? And so he's or longer, probably even, right? Like and so like that's just kind of like where I know that's a big part of like where he came from. And I don't think you have to think there's a big pressure that you have to do that as a founder, as a you can still I think you're even more effective with just your business image, right? And really trying to build that up in a lot of ways.
Although he changed his brand technically, like in terms of personal brand, because he started with a wine and then he changed it into the like business consultant form of work and being an investor type of thing. So, but yeah, it's just he did a good job. Whatever he did a good job. There is always good, I guess.
Absolutely.
Jared, I'm curious about how the culture at your startup, and since you're all about health and wellness, how does the work-life balance and your values and things compare at your startup as opposed to other startups? And I'm wondering if there's like more flexibility with the culture there, or if you guys have like a 4-day work week, or just in general, how do you accommodate for a better work-life balance?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would note is like, so we use Slack. Not saying this is the best thing, but like we have like a self-care Slack channel, and we have like a gratitude Slack channel. And so like, it's kind of like fundamentally ingrained in that. And like the founders talk about self-care all the time, and they reemphasize it. So a lot of it is through like leadership, I would say. It is a bit trickier when you're working in like a decentralized, if your team's decentralized, or if you have people in different parts of the world or parts of North America, as our stylists were set up that way. So we're operating in 11 different cities all across, from California over to here. And that becomes trickier, right? Obviously there's challenges in that. And that's something that we're still trying to figure out, especially as I mentioned, this is a fairly new business now. And it's been going since early July. So that's something that we're still trying to solve for. And I don't think that it's perfect yet, but communicating, reinstilling the values, trying to bring the team together, all those kinds of things are good ways, at least to to build culture and to be able to talk about it.
Awesome. Thanks.
I actually have another question. Something you might have said earlier, but I think I was like just quickly responding to an email. But so when you got into your business and stuff, did you know that that's what you wanted to do? Was there a light bulb? Was it like love at first sight when you heard about media marketing? Or, so yeah, how did you know like this is what I should be doing? Now's the time to take a risk. Let me just start my own little startup.
Yeah, like it was a lot of things. Like it was like part of it was timing. So I had so with the media business, I had just gotten back from Jamaica actually. So I'd been studying there for 3 months, and I had just gotten back, and I was working on my master's and finishing that up. And the timing worked out well. And I think for me, I saw an opportunity. Like, to be completely honest, I saw an opportunity. I had a friend who had been going for I think 3 or 4 months at the time, and I saw that he needed help. And I had a couple phone chats with him of just like from pure just trying to help out and walk him through a couple of the tools that I knew from working at SMU or and that kind of thing. And so I was just walking him through a couple of different training sessions that I knew, and he found them very helpful. And eventually the conversation just led to, hey, do you want to join this this company? And that's where, and I saw the opportunity. I said, this is a great time. I really have nothing to lose right now doing this. So timing. So to answer your question, I guess like timing was a big one. Seeing the opportunity was another one. But then, the other one was like taking action, right? It's a whole other thing to like pick up and move and jump in with both feet, which might be a little bit crazy for some people, but you really got to believe in yourself and believe in what you're doing. I guess those are some of the main contributing factors.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Jared?
Oh,
Yes.
sorry.
Okay, somebody has a question. Okay, I do next. Go for it.
Okay, thank you. How do you deal with clients or customers who do not give you positive feedback? And if that feedback is not the scenario that actually happened, if they paint it as a different story of what actually happened, I guess.
Gotcha. That's a tough one. Like, maybe your customer is crazy. That could be one thing that I go to. And it's just like, if you know that by fact, it's just like, okay, like, let's just take this with a grain of salt and just, if you can, let it go away and just be like, and close the chapter and move on, because that would be the first thing, right? Like, is like, you only have so much energy, and, unfortunately negativity can take up so much of your time, when it's just a lot easier just to say, okay, you know what, if you're able to, maybe you're not able to move on, but if you can, just say like, let's close this chapter and move on. And once again, if you need to have the conversation and communicate on it, then that may be an opportunity too. In a scenario where a customer isn't happy, what I've done previously is like, I've just very much taken the mindset of like, okay, well, what didn't work for you, and what things, if I was to do this again next time, what things could I do better, kind of thing, right? That would be very much the mindset, because what you'll find too is with some of the toughest customers, sometimes they are absolutely crazy. Sometimes though too, they have really good insights, and sometimes the insights they have other customers are also thinking about, or there are the things that will come up. So the sooner you get in front of them, the better.
For sure. Awesome. Thank you.
Welcome.
So yeah, is there anyone has a question, or because I don't want to like do the next one? Okay, I'm good. So Jared, I want to talk about the uncomfortable things but necessary one, cold calling. So cold calling clients, investors, or even like for recruitments. But I want to go for it like a discussion on it. So because I have like a lot of questions on it. So let's start with what you want to share first about cold calling. What's your perspective on that?
I'll share. I used to hate it, but now I absolutely love it. I'll give you an example of a cold call that I made yesterday. And I don't know, you might think it's interesting. You might think I'm absolutely crazy.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll give you a story. So right now we're looking at expanding we need to get a few more studios to work out of. And so I tried contacting, so there's a business that hasn't reopened up. And so I tried contacting them, and their number was dead. So what I did after that is I looked at all the other tenants that were in that same building, and I started calling them. because I was like, I really need to get a hold of this landlord. Do you have any idea? And so I called a restaurant, which is below them. And you're thinking, right, like no one wants to you're probably thinking no one wants to give you the time of day. What, they're not even going to bother, they're just going to hang up on you, right? So I called this restaurant. I was speaking to, whoever's behind the counter there. And I asked him for something. He said, no, I don't know. And then I was like, I can't remember exactly what it was. And I asked him for something else. And he put the phone down for, I don't know, probably 30 seconds or so. And I was just waiting there. And the owner of the restaurant came over and she's like, oh yeah, it's actually like a sub-tenant lease. So here's the name of the guy who has the contract. Here's, and their email. And here's the actual person who's leasing the thing from them. And here's their phone number. And then if those don't work, then here's the number of the guy who owns the building.
Wow.
So within that, I got three options to go from, right?
Yeah.
And, if I had to just been like, no, they're all going to tell me to go away and all this stuff. But so that's one example. The other example is before we did, during our rebrand, I was trying to recruit people, new people to work. We didn't have a website, so no website. We were going off of job descriptions that I had and no brand, like no social presence, right? So I was basically calling people who I didn't know and trying to convince them to come work for us. And it's hard to do when you don't have a website, you don't have much branding, right? And so that's, anyways, we were able to recruit 7 people to come join our team throughout that period. And, it's kind of one of those things where like, you just have to take the mindset of like, I've got a problem in front of me and I got to come up with some crafty solutions to get around it. And so, yeah, like, I mean, I think with cold calling, it can be a little challenging at first and be a little tricky and a little scary, but the more you get used to it, at the end of the day, you're just talking to another person. And if you have the right approach, with people and with another person, then I think they'll want to help you out. Right.
So what is your style in cold calling? Like, how do you approach, for example, someone that like you don't know, you go for a very tailored message to them, like say, I reviewed your resume, you're fabulous, like, let's have a talk, or it's just a random message to say, hi, do you have time, or how are you doing? And then if they respond, if they're social, you continue on that. What's your style on that?
I think, so I would say my style is like my own style. I don't think there's a right or wrong way to go about it. I think like if you've got to find your own is the way I'd say, right? So like when I called this person yesterday and asked for I think I just said, hey, I'm looking for the owner of this studio. Do you have their phone number, or does anyone on staff happen to have their phone number? That's all I said. Didn't have to introduce myself and say I was calling from company XYZ, because either way, they could ask me for more information, right? That's the way I look at it. And then when they ask me for more information, I'm able to start a conversation with them, right? I can tell them why I'm looking into it, and then I can get more information from them, right? So that's just my style though, right? But I encourage you, if you're more of a formal person and you think that type of framework would add value to your conversation or might get more out of it when you're cold calling and that kind of thing, then by all means, it might be worth it. But what I found works even better is just getting kind of like straight to the point, or hitting them with that. A lot of times in entrepreneurship and in business, you talk about that value proposition. I'm sure you've heard that from a lot of people. It's, you want to hit them in the first couple of sentences of like, this is exactly what I can do for you, or this is the exact reason why I'm calling you. Right. Yeah. They're not, otherwise they're sitting there and they're like, like there's waiting, right? They're like waiting patiently and probably politely for 20 to 30 seconds of like, well, okay, what is this call about? Right. That's my take on it though. But once again, I'd encourage you to kind of develop your own style on it.
Okay, just a question on that. So assume that like you open your LinkedIn profile and you see someone messaged you asking for a job. How it should be that it would be convincing to you that you give that person a job? For example, what do you want to see in that message, you personally?
Yeah, I think like the first thing for me is like someone who'd be hiring is like I want to have a need for that position. Like if someone messaged me and I had an active job posting open for that position and they were like, hey, I'm responding to this position and like, here's when I'm good, like XYZ, and it was pretty quick and to the point, like that would be a deal. But if you're just like, hey, I'm a recent grad and I'm just looking for a job, it's like, I don't owe anything to you, right? Like I don't have to help you. But if you came in with the perspective of like, how can I help you, or how can I help this business? And, I really like I believe in your core values. I think, a lot of things you mentioned in your team would be, are aligned with what I do or what I believe in. Those types of things could be helpful. But I would say like, if someone was just to reach out to me and say like I can help you, like I would need to have an immediate need on like my team to fill, and that's probably the way that other people would look at it too.
Yeah, for sure. Just the last questions. Is there any situation that you think, like any set of circumstances, that cold calling can actually like make it worse rather than make it better? Like would be a worse strategy, for example, like have you experienced going to media, for example, asking for reporters to write with you, cold call them and say, let's just have an interview about my business and please publish something about me. I just need for publicity of it. And it had to have a backfire impact on your business.
I would think like, so I would always think about them as like your customer. It's like always think of anyone else you're trying to reach out to like as your customer, and like how are you going to help them? Whether it's media, whether it's like, you know, the guy who I called looking for an apartment, you know, think of them as like your friend or someone that you're also trying to help out, right? Like, why would you reach out to media to do a story on you? Well, you'd have to be doing something novel, right? It'd have to be very interesting for them to pick up on, and you probably want to be talking to the right person there, right? So that would be part of it, and just better understanding like their background, like having done your research on them and what they do and how you can help them out, really.
Yeah, no, good point. Got you. Thank you, Jared.
You're welcome. I see there's a question here about sales reps for B2B businesses. That's not necessarily my area of expertise, but I was responsible for essentially business-to-business sales at my media company. Not that it was like my wheelhouse or my strength or anything, but I think there's probably, my take on it is there's probably a point as your business grows that it makes sense to sell. My belief though, as your business is small, is that it's important for like the founders or the, you know, those who started to do the sales, because you're talking to customers and you're going to want to firsthand hear like what they're talking about, like what are their pain points, right? And you want to get really clear on those, and you want to make things like case studies, or you want to really understand like what their scenario is. And so that would be my take on that. They're probably, you know, reps and sales teams and all that stuff are probably good at a certain level, but when you're starting out, I would really encourage you to do your own sales and have these awkward cold call conversations and send cold emails and all that kind of stuff, because you're going to learn a lot from them more than anything, right? Is that helpful? There? Awesome, no problem. I think we got time for one or two more questions if we want. What do you guys think? Awesome. Mia and Enrique can chat about that. That's good. Awesome. Maybe you should answer that question, Mia.
It's fine, but that's okay. He can just email me, or if anybody has any other questions, more specific, like I guess specific questions, they can just send me an email there.
Cool.
I don't want to take up your time.
No problem. What do you think? Should we leave it there for today? Anyone else? Anything else?
I think it would be good if you want to, like, Jared, share your email or like the way that we can contact with you. And then I think if anyone has more questions, they can just contact directly with you. How's that sound?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat right here so you have it.
Fabulous.
Thanks, Jared. And we did record this session, so we'll be sharing it on the SMUAC's website if anyone wants to go back and rewatch this. So once that's posted on our website, I'll be sure to share the link with Bimbai. She can share that with everyone who's part of the Ignition program. But yeah, I just want to say thank you so much to Jared for coming in and speaking on this topic. And it's really awesome to get a bunch of diverse entrepreneurs coming in to be able to speak to students from all over the province and share their unique experiences being an entrepreneur and what entrepreneurship means to them. So thank you so much. And yeah, please, everyone that was on the call today, email Jared if you have any questions, and we really appreciate you attending this event.
Thanks, Jared. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Jared. It was great.
See ya.
Take care.
It was nice meeting you, Jared. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah.
Bye.